speaking teacher at South Brunswick High School, and today my honors public speaking class is proud to present to you our 2019 Living Legacies Incredible Immigrants. This year, our presentation is slightly different. The entire program, the entire presentation, the visual aid, the speeches, and including the music you will hear today, were all done and created by the students you see here on stage. So sit back, relax, and enjoy our 2019 presentation of Living Legacies, Incredible Immigrants.
A journey of sacrifice, hard work, and huge success. Senor Blanco was in his 20s when he decided to make his move on the big journey from Cuba to the United States. He had lived an amazing life in Cuba with so many people, including his wife, his kids, his parents, his siblings, and so many friends. These people were such a big part of his life, and he says they were the biggest part of his life and still and will always be the biggest part of his life. He mentioned in Cuba that the community was extremely close. Friends, neighbors, and everyone outdoors ended up becoming as close as family was to him, which is amazing because all these people had such an important influence on his decision to move from Cuba to the United States. The biggest challenge in his journey, he mentioned to us, was sacrificing and leaving his family behind. They were in Cuba and he couldn't bring them here. He could only bring his wife and his son. So his parents, his siblings, and all his friends were still in Cuba. Now, when he got to the United States and landed in Miami International Airport for the first time, the first thing he said was, and he quotes, "Wow." There were so many people, so many cars, so many varieties of food, restaurants, supermarkets. It was amazing. And most importantly, he was just amazed by how much freedom people had. The amount of security, amount of happiness, that they could create a lifestyle of their own. He couldn't do this in Cuba because of the communist regime when he was growing up. The government was essentially cracking down on families, on individuals, and this made it so hard for him and his family to sustain a safe living. Now here, the hardest challenge for him was the language barrier. And for all of us, we may not understand that because we can all speak English fluently. But he couldn't. Coming from Cuba, Spanish was the only language he could speak, no English. So as hardworking as he is, he took classes for immigrants to learn the language.
Soon later, he and his family moved to West New York for a few years, and then to Newark, where he taught Spanish in public schools. When he moved to America, his father was very sick, and he was never able to see him again. When he moved to, all of his friends in Cuba gave him the strength to create a successful life for him and his family in South Brunswick. He began as a science professor in Cuba and is now a Spanish teacher at the South Brunswick High School. He is also taught at Monmouth Junction Elementary School and Brooks Crossing Elementary School in South Brunswick. Senor Blanco loves the close relationship between the students and teachers. It gives him such passion while teaching. It has also brought him such joy to hear back from his former students and hear how much he has influenced their lives, not only as a student, but a person as well. These relationships push him to influence more and more lives every day. Just imagine leaving everyone and everything you knew behind. We can never imagine having the strength like Senor Blanco did. The risk of security, freedom, and family. But if we look at the success and the life he has made for himself, it is a beautiful and heartwarming journey. Thank you.
I never could have imagined one of my closest friends at this school and someone my own age could have such a moving story. With his dad being the CEO of Quantum ID Technologies, an international company, Siddhant Gagwekar lived mostly with his mom and his older sister in Mumbai, India. It was a short visit, not one that he remembered either. He was only there for the first 3 years of his life, whereafter he moved to another state in India called Pune, where he stayed for the next 7 years of his life. He had to pay for his public school, 40,000 rupees every year. That's about $579 just for a public school. It's insane. and he really worked to make the education worth the cost. Day in and day out, he was studying and ensured that he was the top of his class, and that meant that he had to work and not play outside with his friends all the time. But there was some positive sides for him. His dad would come home and play racquetball with him, so he'd always look forward to that. Things wouldn't always stay the same though. When he was 10, his sister contracted scoliosis, and 2 years later, his parents had finally made the decision to move to America because they trusted the American medical system more than the Indian medical system. They decided to move to South Brunswick because they decided that they wanted to go to a place where they'd be warmly welcomed in, as they had a lot of family friends there. When Sid first came to the Americas, he was so pleased. He couldn't believe that he could finally see all of those family friends that had only come to visit him occasionally when he was in India. In fact, the first thing that he did when he came to America was ask one of his family friends for some water. And unknowingly, the family friend gave him some soap. And he didn't know it was soap either, so he drank it and he threw up a lot. But he did have Dunkin' Donuts and Domino's after, so it sort of counterbalanced that soapiness. Things weren't always so fun for Sid though. He didn't have any friends because he just moved, and that made him an easy target. Yeah, Sid got bullied a lot. He was always the receiver of racist remarks, like, go back to your own country. And people had even made fun of him for having a tiffin box. That tiffin box was a gift that his grandmother had given him before she passed away. And it meant a lot to him, and he couldn't believe that people were making fun of him for having that instead of a brown bag for lunch. People had even started making fun of his mom and his sister more than just him. And even though he was mad by all of it, he always followed his mother's advice, which is to never fight back. After acclimating to the American lifestyle, after a few years, he realized how much of a pushover he'd been. And he'd realized that if he'd stood up for himself, then things would have been a lot different. And he really urges everyone to stand up for themselves in the face of people who are abusing their power. Things finally got better for Sid when his entire class took his trip to Regular Park when he was in 7th grade. He didn't have a lot of friends during the trip, but when someone started playing some music, he just started breakdancing and everyone loved it. As a result, he got quite a few friends, and those friends were really supportive. They really helped him become a better version of himself, and as a result, he was able to become a nationally recognized racquetball player, and he joined the South Brunswick High School robotics team, where he coded for days and nights and test drove robots so that he could go to the competition. There's still one last hitch in Sid's ride though. He himself contracted scoliosis when he was in his junior year of high school. Again, he had to be separated from his friends for 2 months. And when he came back, not only did he have to acclimate to the school lifestyle again, but he had to stop playing racquetball to prevent his spine from getting any more injuries. As the story is now coming to a close, Sid's presently committed to UT Austin, where he's going to pursue a major in mathematics, and he's absolutely stoked. Sid's life has truly been an emotional roller coaster. From breakdancing at Regular Park, to drinking soap, to being bullied, to having to see his sister contract scoliosis, to even contracting scoliosis himself. His life has been full of ups and downs. I guess the next time you guys are going through your own adversities, you can remember Sid's story, and you can remember that even if you're facing hardships, you can go through it head on and create the life that you want to live.
Rosario Epifania. Rosario Epifania, a truly unique story. Please, sit back and listen while I share his glory. From Italy to Jersey and back again, you may not know now, but let me explain. He moved from Italy as a 1-year-old, a move that for some might seem bold. He moved his family to Jersey City. For him and his family, this was certainly no pity. A new life to begin. I think that's a win. Spending the next 17 years while up high is his chin. But back to Italy he goes, just like that. That might seem annoying, just like a nap. Not to go back to his home country, that's great. Some might consider this move to be fate, but to move back means new culture entirely. To move back means new culture entirely. Adjusting to the new dialect, he had to study, quite scholarly. The schooling and the language were the biggest culture shock. Adjustments was hard, just like a rock. The schooling was very different from the USA. The schools prepared you for a job that you would perform every day. Schooling trains you for a specific career. Through these adversities is something everyone must adhere. But when Rosario turned 21, he moved back to Italy. Returning to Italy when he was 21 wasn't much of a surprise. Returning to the States turned out to be wise. His father found much better work here. His job security was something he no longer had to fear. Most of his family lived in the States as well. Living near his loved ones was something, well, swell. Now that he's back, we can all rejoice. Because being back in Jersey City, he now had a choice. Living in South Brunswick, he now lives in South Brunswick where we all belong. Living day by day, simply moving along. Raising a family, a lovely wife and son. His story isn't over. In fact, it's just begun.
I am Gordon Barnes. Ghana is where I'm happy. Ghana is my home. I never want to leave here. It's where my seed was sown.
Here, I got my bachelor's, but in order to advance, I had to go to England for a master's in finance.
Arriving at England came with a great shock. Neighbors barely knew each other, but in Ghana, I knew everyone on the block.
Finishing up my master's, I looked for a job and all, while a persistent friend invited me to the US, so I answered his call.
2001, I got here, the year the Twin Towers fell, a devastating occurrence known as 9/11.
Not only were lives lost, but my future came to an end. The job market crashed right after. I had no money left to spend.
Bed Bath & Beyond, I worked there in November 2001, pushing carts in the parking lot, and when this happened, I was done.
Ramming those carts into each other, putting them in their place, a scorching cup of coffee splashed right onto my face.
What was I doing with my life? Why was I even here? That day I quit my job. I just wanted to disappear.
But my friend did not give up. He then introduced me to a Guinean lady who worked at KPLC.
I started to tutor children in math, and they spotted teaching talent. Informed South Brunswick High School of a possible candidate.
Great news? Sure. But I missed my family. In Ghana stayed my wife and son. They were without me.
And you know what? South Brunswick gave me the position. Please call me Mr. Barnes. Halfway done with the mission.
So I applied for my green card, a long process indeed. If I could change one thing, it would be this speed.
The day I received it was the happiest day, as my wife could now join me. Hip hip hooray!
Joy and miracles kept showering my way when my next son was born on another beautiful day.
Now I love my job, and I love being here, with all my friends and family whom I hold near and dear.
Through all my ups and downs, my happiness started to roam, but I have found it again in the US, and now the US is my home.
A tribute to Karen Hunt. In the midst of the sea, a small but mighty island came to be. St. Kitts is what they called it, a land where everyone was at glee. Though they were of a small quantity, all was part of a one big, happy family.
Amongst the people was a woman who passed down her charms so gracefully, still bringing everyone together in so much harmony. A winner of Miss St. Kitts, a treasure who was looked upon so greatly. Karen Hunt is the one who everyone wanted to be.
She had a vision to flee to a world that was just free, wanting to pursue her education in her dream academy.
The United States of America, a land where everyone could believe. She finally made it at 18 with a goal that she desired to achieve.
Education in college was not the only thing she happened to perceive. Racism was something that caused her to grieve.
Her accent was one that she could not leave. A roadblock to her first impressions, it was something that left her to disbelieve.
Life was not easy. There would be many obstacles in her journey. This is what she thought, but this time did not grieve.
Her confidence did not let her feel heavy. Motivation, humbleness, and determination was still plenty.
Her career was soon catching up. An accountant was what she wanted to be. For many years, she worked, and a 6-figure salary was what she was to receive.
After getting married, she badly wanted a family to create more memories, but at the same time, she wanted to live happily.
2 children came, and another eventually. After almost losing him, she realized that life had its quality.
It was only till her boss had set to retrieve a job as a teacher, but an accountant was one that she did not necessarily have to leave.
At South Brunswick High School, she is an accounting teacher, naturally, spreading her knowledge to students most patiently.
We now come to the end of her long and difficult journey. Karen Hunt is the one who has proven herself worthy.
Hi, my name is Samantha Saldana Kuncharam. 30 years ago, my whole life took a turn for the better. My family and I moved to the United States. Before that, however, we lived in the most populous city in Pakistan, Karachi. My memories are not all too clear about my time there, but there are still bits and pieces that I remember from my time over there.
I still remember the mouth-watering taste of falsas, a type of fruit popular in Pakistan, and still crave it from time to time. After moving to the United States, I didn't feel the frightening effect of culture shock all that much because Karachi is one of the more modern cities in Pakistan. There were some challenges along the way, but eventually I found the path that connected me to my future here in South Brunswick.
To my dismay, upon traveling to the United States for the first time, I was overwhelmed with air sickness. I could feel my little 6-year-old fingers tremble with fear amongst an abundance of other emotions piled over my already ailing state. The minute we got out of the flight onto the roads of New Jersey, we went straight to church since it was Good Friday. My memories are not all too clear about what we did, but I do remember it was Good Friday. After we went to church, we went to visit some family I had not seen in years. I was ecstatic to see my cousins because I finally felt a sense of belonging in a whole new country. While my parents went to go look for houses, my brother and I stayed with family who had been residing in the US for many years, which in turn helped my family and I get accustomed to Western norms. We ended up living in Edison, New Jersey, where I attended all of my schooling up until the end of high school.
Adjusting to life was not too difficult, but I did have a bit of trouble with how I said certain words, especially since some people were not able to understand what I was saying. Nevertheless, as I grew older, I ended up fixing this issue once I became more familiar with the culture and the language. My brother and I grew up speaking only English, but along the way, I did learn how to speak in Urdu, the official language of Pakistan, the same way I learned how to speak in Spanish. I cannot imagine what my life would have been like if I had not moved to the United States. I would be living in constant fear and anxiety due to the political situation there. I would not have received such a great education or the countless amount of opportunities as a woman in Pakistan. Now, I work as a social studies teacher in South Brunswick High School, and I could not be more happier with where this journey has landed me.
After all these years, I have yet to visit Pakistan again. However, I would love to go back and see how much it has evolved and visit my roots. If I ever did decide to go back, I would only go with my parents since I don't speak Urdu fluently, and getting around would be really, really difficult. I also don't have much to miss about Pakistan since none of my family lives there anymore.
I don't miss the food there because there's a copious amount of South Asian food right here in the US. Personally, I feel like seeing my American cousins for the first time helped me a lot in transitioning and not making me feel like an outcast. This contributed largely to the reason why I don't miss Pakistan excessively.
As all these years go by, it becomes more and more clear to me that I consider home to be right here in South Brunswick.
Pakistan will always hold a special place in my heart, especially since it is my birthplace. But my kids, my husband, and my job is here.
The diversity here in New Jersey is incomparable to and unlike any other place I have ever seen, which in my opinion creates a sense of unity in the community.
I hope that people continue to learn more about other cultures and step out of their comfort zones to experience the wonderful diversity we have here.
On the cold and crisp night of December 22nd, 1967, Fadi Beshalani was born in the small village Jwar Halz in Lebanon. Growing up in Lebanon was not easy. This meant that Fadi had to learn how to do everything by himself as nothing was easily provided for him. During this time, war was raging in Lebanon, which meant that wars were being fought quite literally in his own backyard. An experience he remembers quite vividly is when he was 5 years old, washing and drying his clothes outside on the rope with his clothespins. He went to refill his bucket up with water when out of nowhere a grenade landed about 10 feet in front of him and his life flashed right before his eyes. Thankfully, the grenade did not detonate as he used all the power in his little 5-year-old body to sprint as fast as he could away from it. As Fadi continued to grow up, he found love within food, both making it and eating it.
As the war in Lebanon continued to grow, Fadi decided that it was time for change in his life. He did not want to spend the rest of his life living in fear, not knowing whether that day would be his last. He packed up his bags, packing whatever was essential to him, his clothes, personal information, and pictures of his family, since he would be the only one leaving from Lebanon. He was only 26 when the change of his life occurred. He went to get his papers and visa and was luckily granted permission to enter the United States. He soon boarded the plane and was on his way to the JFK International Airport. Not knowing anyone as well as not knowing the English language properly was a true challenge navigating to the airport. Once he made it out of the airport, though, did the challenge actually begin.
Because he did not know anyone in America, he headed over to Brooklyn, New York, where he heard there was a large population of Lebanese people. Over there, he easily got a job as a bread delivery man, and he quickly learned the streets of New York City. Currently, to this day, he can navigate around without a GPS, and he still remembers every single street and some of his customers.
The joy which came from cooking was circulating inside of Fadi. He knew that he wanted to continue his career even further now that he had more opportunities to be successful with the restaurant. He headed to New Brunswick and purchased a restaurant and named it Newbies. To this day, it is still very successful and has many college students visiting to get a nice warm meal. Fadi still lives in South Brunswick where he has 2 daughters, one of which is a junior at SBHS.
Living in a country where war is best friend, it's far from hard, it's far from easy. It's very difficult living when you know that your life is on the line, especially when your family, all they do is farm work, and that's exactly where the war is at. Life for Imam Shibli was very hard. He faced many obstacles and many difficulties, but who would know that towards the end, he finally laughed in those obstacles' faces. Going away from your family and going to a different country was not easy, especially when you graduate and pursue your dream and becoming the first person from your entire family to go to college is not easy, especially when that college is an Islamic college in Egypt called Al-Aqsa College, where 70% of people who graduate become scholars, is far from easy. But later on, he faced those obstacles and he knew exactly what to do. Even when he was down, he knew that he could get back up, just like how everyone over here in this room would get back up if they have any obstacles that they have faced. It was far from easy when you find yourself separated from your family, separated from your safety, separated from your loved ones, and going to the US, now being a minority in 2 different countries. That was not easy. When you go to a mosque and become an imam there, that was not easy. Being the first person in your family to actually be a professor at LSU and teach Arabic, that was not easy. However, Imam Shibli found his ways and he made it seem easy.
After the beginning parts of his life, the various adversities, as well as the various triumphs, Imam Shibli was able to find his place. After his brief role as a professor at LSU, Imam Shibli decided to move to South Brunswick with the help of a Louisiana family he had met. Fun fact, to this day, Imam Shibli still has connection with that family, and that shows how he doesn't forget his past and where he came from. As Imam Shibli came to South Brunswick, he had many big ideas, and he wanted to spread not only Islam, but unite the very small amount of Muslims that resided in South Brunswick at the time. Imam Shibli, as his journey went on, made various connections throughout South Brunswick, and he was able to found a mosque, ISCJ, or the Islamic Society of Central Jersey, along with other co-founders. In his life, he wanted to constantly grow and share and be charitable toward not only the Muslim community, but the South Brunswick and New Jersey community as a whole. He inspired not only the adults, but the youth of the community as well. An example of one youth that was inspired could be Atia Aftab, the chairwoman of mosques in the United States of America. She states that her inspiration to go up the ladder was Imam Shibli and his powerful voice. Imam Shibli also inspired the people of ISCJ to be charitable. He went on many ventures and tried to take part in communities that were grieving through events, and he also wanted to, in general, contribute artwork and other things that would be useful to those communities. In fact, in South Brunswick, if you go to the public library and look at the various pieces of artwork, you'll see that ISCJ was a prime donor of said art. Imam Shibli's journey allowed him to see the world, not only from his own country of Lebanon, which was war-torn, but from the perspective of others that were different ethnicities as well as cultures from his own. And with that, he was able to find even more ways to connect with other people on an emotional and social level, and be able to spread his message without offending, and also helping them to understand the message that he was trying to spread. Renowned philosopher Lao Tzu states, "A journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step." But Imam Shibli taught me that the journey of one's legacy starts with the powerful will of one man.
She spent the first 7 years of her life on a farm in a large house that she shared with her uncle's family. She loved living here. Her childhood was full of animals, nature, and adventures. Eventually, when she was 15 years old, her family decided to move to America for a better life and in order to escape the communism in Cuba. Although she was sad to leave, she knew her life was changing for the better. The hardest part of her departure was saying goodbye to all her relatives and friends. She packed her suitcase and embarked on her first journey in an airplane. Her family first lived in New York City upon their arrival in America. Everything was different for her. Coming from a small farm to a huge and crowded city was a momentous change. She realized the stark difference that America had to her life at home in Cuba. Even though with all the noisy and cars and buses and streets full of people, she knew these were the things she would have to adapt to.
Other than the difference in setting, she noticed all the culturally diverse people in America, and she developed a sense of appreciation for everything. This was something Cuba was not fond of. She noticed all the different races and genders and all the different cultures in America, and a sense of excitement developed inside her. Every part of this new country had a stark difference to her life at home in Cuba, even including the landscape, the weather, and even the education system. Her first few years of school proved a few hardships due to her lack of understanding of English. Along with those hardships, she was expected to do well, help her brothers, do chores at home, and cook, while her mom attended college and her dad worked 2 jobs. All these things proved to be very overwhelming and stressful, but she managed to pull through. At the age of 17, Maritza got a job at McDonald's, but it only lasted a week. Upon graduation, she attended New York University, where she majored in Latin American Area Studies and 3 languages, including French, Italian, and Spanish. She worked really hard and was proud of herself and managed to get into one of the best universities at the time.
However, midway through studying language, New York University dropped this program. Maritza was lost and confused on what she wanted to study. However, after long thinking, she realized that she loved helping others and teaching others, so she thought maybe she should become a teacher. However, her mom was a teacher and she didn't want to become exactly like her family. She wanted to become different. But at the end of the day, she realized that teaching was really what she wanted to do. After college, she met Louis Arango. They fell in love and got married, and then they moved to northern New Jersey. Maritza loved northern New Jersey. It was quiet and calm and the perfect place to start a family. She then had 2 kids, a son and a daughter. Today, she is so lucky to have raised such nice, amazing children in such an amazing nation full of opportunities. Today, she currently works at South Brunswick High School and teaches high-level Spanish courses, where she makes an impact on all her students and helps them as much as possible. At the end of the day, South Brunswick High School would not be the same without her.
The story of Vijayashree Rao is very interesting, but to fully understand her story, we have to start from the beginning, where she was born, Delhi, India. Delhi is known for the street food, the overpopulation, the close friends, the parties, the excitement. Delhi, for in other words, is like the New York City of India. Growing up in India, she was accustomed to and liked the company of many, as she had 9 family members, her close friends, the cleaning lady, which is very common in India, the milkman, the man who ironed her clothes, and so many more. She grew up in this environment. She liked it. However, near the start of her middle school, her life changed. She had to move. And not to another part of India, not to America, but to Africa. Her father was a government employee, and he was sent to Africa to help build industries there. Naturally, she was very upset as she was going to leave her whole entire life behind. And when she found out her favorite chocolate was not available in Africa, she was very disappointed. But she knew she had to go, so she packed her bags, and in a few days' time, she was in Africa.
Africa was very intriguing. She met a lot of new people and was surprised by the culture there. She even met her first crush there. Overall, her and her family enjoyed their time in Africa. It was also during this time that she realized her dreams to travel the world. In the 8th grade, she was called back to India by her mother to continue her studies. She had always been an avid reader, but now she was focused on reading books discussing countries and places all over the world. One place that interested her greatly was New York City, and she promised herself that one day she would visit there. As she grew older, this dream to visit the city increased, but this was not the most important thing going on in her life. She was now old enough to be married, and her family was focused on getting her a suitor. Yet, her father kept her dream in mind and paired her with a man who was set to settle in America in a few months' time. After a few meetings, the pair got married, and soon after, the man left and settled down in America. 3 months later, she packed her bags and followed him with everything a new bride might need for a life in America. The first thing she did when she landed was visit New York City. She instantly fell in love with it and would become a frequent visitor over her time in America. She moved to Newark, which was convenient since it was close to the university she was studying at the time. She tried to make home feel like India, but it was very hard to adapt at first. The hardest thing for her was the loneliness, since her husband worked very long hours and she barely knew anybody here. Yet, she found strength through her college mentors and her husband. She was also exposed to racism for the first time in America, yet she fought through it with the help of the people surrounding her. After living in Newark for some time, she became a mother of 2 and decided that it would be better for her to settle down in South Brunswick, New Jersey.
Here, she bought her very first house, and she even changed her field from teaching to IT. In 2000, her and her husband decided to create an IT company, but her love for teaching pulled her back, and she became a substitute teacher at the South Brunswick High School. Years have passed, and now she's very famous amongst the teachers and students. Her warm and bubbly personality makes her so welcoming and approachable.
her contribution to the South Brunswick community has been very amazing. But her contributions don't just end there. Her and her family helped by donating to NJIT and Rutgers. Vijayshree's dream from a very young age was to travel the world and see different places, especially New York City. Today, she can successfully say that she's been all over the world and is a frequent visitor of the city. Vijayashree is an inspiration to us all, as she is living proof that dreams do come true.
The year is 1998, and a young boy at the age of 16 named Davi is making his way to school on a warm January day in South Africa. The day was sunny and the air was fresh. Everything was normal. School went quick, and it was time to head home to enjoy the rest of the beautiful day. Unfortunately, moving day came sooner than expected, and the bags were packed and everything was ready to be shipped out. He pleaded to his parents to have one more night in the place that he called home, but it was too late. The flight was booked and his new life was ready to begin. Fast forward to after the flight, and it was now a cold winter day just hours later, and he was in the unknown. The ground was masked with white, and the new environment was much different than the warm South African climate that he was used to. Instead of bustling nature and thriving plant life, he was greeted by the frigid and somber winters in America. Although the situation looked dreary, he was able to find peace when he felt the cool, powdered snow in the palm of his hand for the first time. When he first arrived in the new world, there was a lot to do, and his first night in America, he decided to jump headfirst into culture by taking a risk, eating pizza and drinking root beer. Now, it might seem like a mundane night for most, but to him, it was a night he would never forget. And his first taste of American culture was everything that he had expected and more. Much of his time was taken up by learning new things, whether that was learning the culture of America or getting an education in school, but nothing could have prepared him for the plight of learning a new language. Fortunately, he had a lot of supporters, and his parents and his English teachers were right behind his back, willing to help. His English teachers were very supportive and gave him much needed information so that he would become successful in learning the language. But his parents also gave him a lot of support, and their support was much better. They decided that the best way for him to learn a new language was for him to stop using his old language of Afrikaans all in general. Afrikaans being the language of South Africa, they decided that he would not be allowed to speak the language in his own home. This was a great technique, and it gave him the much needed education and ability to learn the new language and give him the skills that he needed for the rest of his life.
First day of school. This was a day that American public students are excited for over the 2 months of their summer break. What did you do over the summer? This was a 7-word question that almost every child had spent weeks preparing for. However, for Davi, there were no fun trips to Disneyland, no day trips to Six Flags. However, the last 2 months had been spent uprooting his life, moving what seemed to be worlds apart overseas to the United States. His integration into the American public school system was tough. However, with the help of his English teacher turned friend, he slowly began to break down the language barrier that separated him from being a true American teen. However, as Davi bounced from friend group to friend group, he found his closest friends within the church. His tutor and mentor, his youth group pastor, helped him show his passion for ministry. This was a passion that would later on lead him to his life career. Davi now is a youth group pastor at the CMA Church of Princeton Alliance Church. This passion helps him grow closer with students and helps lead them on their path to Christ. However, 20 years later, Davi is completely different. The memory of Johannesburg, South Africa, a pure memory. However, he is proud to be an American, and he is proud to call America his home. America has given him his beautiful wife, as well as his 2 foster children turned adopted children. South Africa, however, will always have a place in his heart.
as well as the people and connections he's made within it. If any regret, Davi would say that his regret was not keeping his connections within South Africa and losing touch. He's learned several lessons over the years. However, one advice he would give to people in his shoes as a 16-year-old boy would be to be yourself and embrace your individuality and never forget where you came from. Embrace your roots no matter where life takes you.
Year 2001. It was a hidden gem at the time. She knew that this was the place to raise her son and daughter. For her, it had, and continues to have that cozy sense of belonging, a place where she can be her true self. Here, she works tirelessly to improve the lives of numerous individuals, including mine. Rupa Roy is no stranger to moving to a new country. She is well known among South Brunswick students as an excellent math tutor and an amazing person all around. Without a doubt, her journey to South Brunswick is incomplete without her passion for service and education. Her experiences in and out of this town have forged a new perspective of finding a balance in today's world, a perspective that continuously evolves. Before the thought of moving to South Brunswick ever crossed her mind, Rupa Auntie, as most students called her, was struggling to make ends meet as a college student in Dublin. The only possible option was to tutor some kids nearby to support herself and her family. This grew into something special. It was this spark that ignited her passion for the years to come. Because of this, she spent more time away from college. Eventually in '93, she graduated with a master's in math, possible by spending sleepless nights self-studying her way through the coursework. With her master's in hand, she moved to Australia a year later and had to start all over again. Communication was such a huge hurdle for her. Yet, with an open mind, she found herself well integrated, pursuing her tutoring passion while maintaining a professional career. 3 years later, in Edison, New Jersey, she came across a small town called South Brunswick and fell in love with the community. This was the place. It all seems right to this day. Rupa Auntie considers the library to be the focal point of this town. The sense of belonging was more than she could have ever asked for. While maintaining her professional career in tutoring classes, she struggled to find that work-life balance at first. Her true passions. She set up the A1 Learning Center in 2004, where she started working as a tutor full-time. Rupa Auntie has been putting her students before her for the past 15 years, and for the future, she hopes to do even more. The past 18 years in South Brunswick have gone full circle, with her youngest graduating from college this year. Her dreams for South Brunswick continue to evolve, and in the near future, she hopes to provide an accessible education for all who seek it. Here, she finally feels at home, in a place where her past experiences and her timeless passion for service have provided a balance in the present.
You have arrived at your destination. Please unbuckle your seatbelts and take your belongings while you exit the aircraft. I listened to my air hostess with the utmost curiosity. Looking around me, I was wonderstruck by my new home, the United States of America. Thinking back to everything that needed to happen to make this moment possible, I thought of when I got my green card, had to say goodbye to my family, had to pack up my entire life from Bombay, and finally make this journey all by myself. Now I can say it was all worth it. I came to the US in the early 90s and majored in civil engineering. After 2 years of community college, I got my bachelor's degree from the New Jersey Institute of Technology. After graduating from NJIT, I went on to do information technology and became an administrator for 7 years. At this point, I didn't feel like there was an issue with my ethnicity, as I was continued to be surrounded by an Indian community. However, the weather was an aspect that was hard to adjust to because being used to hot weather, American winters came as a shock. It took a little bit of accommodating. However, I was comfortable in Edison because of the temples, vegetarian food, and fellow immigrants around me. There were also some things that I'm so glad to have learned about before I got here. For example, the fact that we drive on the opposite side of the road. I'm so glad that I didn't get into any accidents because I had that information. Another aspect that was difficult for me to inculcate into my language was the English accent. My mother tongue being Gujarati, I was fortunate to have learned English as a second language from kindergarten all through 10th grade back in high school. Tapes, podcasts, and other learning devices helped me then and also help me now sometimes as well. During my transition between jobs, I also fell in love and got married.
My wife and I were blessed with 3 beautiful children, 2 boys and 1 girl, triplets. I grew up with 3 sisters, and now I was going to raise 3 children of my own. Everything in my life seemed to come in trios, and 3 soon became my favorite number. When my kids began to go to school in South Brunswick, I began to look into the education system. While South Brunswick had always been an acclaimed community for its education, I began to wonder as to how it could improve. I looked into the curriculum and even sat on a committee. It was then when I realized that I could run to be on the South Brunswick Board of Education to have a bigger impact. In 2012, I ran to serve on the South Brunswick Board of Education. Unfortunately, I lost my election twice and won my election the 3rd time. I told you 3 was my lucky number. Since then, I have served on the Transportation Committee and have also served on the South Brunswick Women's Commission as well. From there, I have also been doing a lot of work to make sure that the curriculum at South Brunswick High School and overall in the entire district continues to improve. However, during my 2nd election, during the campaign trail, as I was putting up lawn signs, I remember being a victim of racism and prejudice. It was during that moment when I was told to go back to my native country. At first, I was shocked, surprised, and quite frankly, hurt by such an ignorant comment. Yet, I never let that impede my desire to seek change. And it was within that moment when I realized what Bill Gates once said, if you want something, go for it. And that was exactly what I was going to do. Aspects of my life have continued to change since my election. I continue to serve on the Board of Education and have continued to expand my career in civil engineering. I've been fortunate enough to have my family by my side in the U.S., and from time to time, I do visit the motherland with them. I continue to remain thankful for having been given the opportunity to better my life and expand my horizons. Thank you.
And that concludes our 2019 Living Legacies presentation, Incredible Immigrants. I'd like all of our students to please stand. Thank you all for